Hi everyone, Elisa with Jots Designs, and today I'm going to show you a piece that I ended up with 3 layers on it, and I ended up using 3 different resins as well. I started it back in 2017, finally finished it in 2019, and luckily I still had the video from that first layer, so you'll be able to see all 3 of them, and also see what I did wrong in the second layer and how I corrected it in the third layer. So give the video a thumbs up and click that subscribe and notification bell so you don't miss my future videos. And also check me out on Facebook and Instagram for some current projects. Anyways, let's get started. Okay, so for this first layer, I used Pro Marine Supply's Tabletop Epoxy Resin. And then I also have some Lorez Midnight Black and Angel White. And then I grabbed some Folk Art Ultra Dye Purple Rain and Liquitex Ink Muted Turquoise. And I think I had just gotten my Lorez box, my order in, because I'm using it all. I've got the Sugar Plum Paste and Deep Purple Powder. And I've also got the Dusty Teal and Turquoise Blue powders as well. And then I just start mixing up the resin and sorting that out. Got the black and the white mixed up first and laid down on the canvas, and then just mixed up everything else really quick. And I start layering the cool colors on one side of the white and the warm colors on the other side, just to give them a little bit of separation right there in the middle to start with. Give it a little heat, and I'm blowing it around. You'll see a straw kind of pop in, but I'm actually using a battery-powered inflator tool that you can see right there. And I had a straw on it, but the straw fell out because I didn't tape it. But that's what I'm using to move the resin, and I'm just using the heat gun and torch to heat it up and pop the bubbles. So then I just layer the colors around in more areas that I wanted it to be. Those colors, of course. Popped bubbles, removed some hairs, popped more bubbles. And then I went around and made sure all my edges were covered so that way it would flow off nicely. And then maybe almost a year, a little over a year later, I decided I wanted to do a second layer on it. I finally decided what I wanted to do with it. And I grabbed this tool. It's a little rotary tool. It's meant for your fingernails, but it works great in this case, especially with this metal tip on it. You just go in and lightly get down to where the hair is, or a dust particle or a bug or something. Just take that out. Wiped it down with some water to get the dust off, and then cleaned it off with some alcohol. And for the second layer, I had Stone Coat Art Coat, and I'll be using System 3 White, but I wanted to do a swipe, and I didn't have anything for a swipe except I had this. It was oil-based. I thought it would work, and I'll show you what happened with that, of course, here in a minute. Had that Mayron Gold, Lorez Turquoise Blue and powder, and the teal. And you can see this Kills paint is, I think it's old. I think that was part of my problem. But I think the big difference is the fact that it was oil-based only, and you need an oil-based enamel. And so I added it in. I made sure it wasn't opaque or anything. And then I added the System 3 White in to actually make it a white opaque. And then just mixed up the rest of my colors here. And with the powders, I like to add them on top of the resin so I know the ratios that I'm getting. And then I just fold it in gently and then stir it. That way I don't have any powder coming out or anything. And I started with a clear base layer. Just spread that all around, edges and everything. And I wanted to do a swipe down the whole entire thing, going across it. So I just layered my colors next to each other and then put the white on. And you want to do color over white, and that's what will generally create the cells. I was using some different tools. I had seen Clara Lawrence using that spatula, and I'm like, oh, I have some of those. Let me try that. And it did not work with this, but I'm pretty sure it was the paint that did it. So I ended up grabbing some freezer paper, which is what I have underneath there, and using that. And it just seemed to grab the colors better than either of the other tools on this one. So I was just using that. And then I went back the other way just to fill in gaps and whatnot. But it wasn't selling the way that I wanted it to. There are some cells in the white a little bit, but it was more because the white was spread out thin, and it wasn't the normal swiping cells that I was looking for. So I decided to add more resin to it and then just make it more of a kind of feathery layer, and then I would add another layer on top of that. Added some streaks of gold in there, and then feathered them out a little bit with the heat gun. Okay, so for the third layer, I'm using some Clear Cast 7050 resin, and I'll talk more about that in a minute here. For the colors, I've got System 3 White, Rust-Oleum Protective Enamel, Oil-Based Gloss White, and that's what helps with the cells. You want enamel and oil-based and gloss. And I've got Lorez Teal again. And then to pull out some of the colors I used in the first layer, I grabbed some Just Resin Fuchsia. Okay, so just to prep the piece, I've got some 150 grit sandpaper, and I'm just lightly scratching up the top, the sides, the corners, everything, and then just wipe the dust off with some water, and then grab the alcohol and wipe any like fingerprint oils or anything off. So with this resin, again, it's first time I'm using it, and it's a 2-to-1 ratio resin. So it's 2-part resins, 1-part hardener, and you can do that by volume or weight. I got that from the Epoxy Resin store, and I've got links below for them and also discount codes. Check that out. And the instructions just say to mix it 3 to 5 minutes, scraping the sides, the bottom, and the stick. Let it stand for about 5 minutes in the container, and it'll help the bubbles rise to the top as well. So I'm going to be using 6 ounces of it. 2 ounces is going to be the hardener, and then 4 ounces on top of that of the resin. But I really wanted to see how it worked with swiping. And it's really usually good for coating and small things like jewelry. And you don't really want it to be thicker than 1/8 of an inch. So deep casting, that's not what this resin's for, but it's good for doming and stuff like that. So I'm just mixing up my colors, and I realized I wanted to add some gold and bring that out from the second layer as well. There's the fuchsia, and then mix up the teal here. And I'll slow this down to regular time so you can see how much I actually add in. And what I realized is I don't want to mix this up again with this type of stick because it's harder to scrape off all the excess. So I got quite a bit in there. With your cells, the more you add, you can actually lose cells if it's too much. So you want it to be a little transparent. And then the more transparent it is, the more clear and crisp your cells will be. But if you add just a little bit more, then you get more texture and in your cells before you start losing them. So I really like having that extra texture in there. But because you're making it transparent, you want to add a little bit of white paste with it so you get that white color and can make it opaque as well. So I just add a little bit of the System 3 in here. It wasn't quite what I wanted, so I'm going to add just a little bit more. And you see that I don't add very much just to make it opaque. It's not the normal amount that I would use for this amount of resin if it was by itself. And that bottle likes to drip on the side, so I always make sure I wipe it off before I put the lid back on. Otherwise, I find little white rings on my shelves and stuff. But I'll get that mixed in and clear everything off here in just a second. But you can see that it's definitely more white and more opaque. Get that gold in there. Again, I just fold it in and then I'll stir it once it's gently folded in. And I'm starting with the clear base on this one because of course I want to see through the cells down to the other layers. And at first I grabbed this silicone brush. It's a hair dyeing brush in a set that I got, but I decided it's just easier sometimes if you're coating the whole entire thing, just use your glove and get a new glove or wipe it off. Then I clear all the bubbles out and then just start pouring my colors down. They're kind of side by side and then crossed over a little bit because I wanted to do my swipes in different directions. And then at some point I realized I knocked over my gold, but was able to salvage it and add that on. And then I'll add my white. So when you're swiping, you definitely want to make sure that whatever you're using isn't too heavy. I've got some freezer paper again, and that's what I have below to protect my surface. But when you're swiping, you want to make sure you're dragging the color over that oil-based enamel. Some people also use a base tint, and it's basically the same properties, and that's why they, of course, sell the same. But you want to go over that. And I slowed it down just to normal time so you can actually see how slowly I drag this, because you don't want to go too fast. You'll lose your color, and then you can also skip over the resin a little bit and have gaps and holes in your swipe. And then I just kind of turn it and feather it out and bring it out off the side there. And then with the freezer paper, I just like to grab some scissors. I'm cutting off a little piece that had some extra resin on the side there, but I'll just cut off the little bit that I used on the swipe. So I'll do this next one so you can see it. Sped it up just a little bit, but you don't need more than, you know, like a pencil width on there. This one has just a little bit more, but it's still an okay amount. You don't want the whole entire piece of paper going over it, just a little bit on the edge there. And I'm gonna just speed the rest of this up so we can get through this. But you can see on that other side how I'm still going over the white with the colors. And then I just add some gold in the center just to give it a little bit more definition in there. And then this part, you can see that the cells are actually really popping out when I hit them with the torch. And I've noticed that compared to like one of the base tints, the cells will normally pop out by themselves that way. But with the enamel oil-based Rust-Oleum, they definitely come out when I hit them with the torch. So it's kind of nice because then you can actually say, hey, this is where I want my cells. And you can kind of dictate where your cells are going to be. And then I just grab some of the runoff a little bit to add a little bit more definition in the center and some lines around that. Made sure all the bubbles were gone, and that's it. So now I am topping it with a clear coat, but I noticed as it was drying, but at some point I accidentally trailed some clear resin along the bottom there, and you can see that gap in the swipes. For some reason, my leveling abilities weren't right with this one, or the canvas is a little wonky, and it started moving. I corrected it, and then that gap got a little bit bigger. But I had some other pieces I wanted to coat as well, so I made a bunch of resin up, spread it out over everything, and then just let it dry, and it was good to go. So these are some close-up pictures for you. I hope you enjoyed the video. Definitely give the video a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Get that bell notification turned on so you know when I upload videos. And I also have links below for the Epoxy Resin store where I got the Clearcast 7050. There's coupon codes down there for that, and coupon codes for the res as well. Definitely check those out, and I'll see you guys later.